Hi. So our session is called Get Fertile, the impact of integrative medicine on diet and health. My name is Cloud, and I had the absolute pleasure of meeting this doctor about 2 years ago. I'd had a really painful miscarriage, both physically and emotionally, and my husband and I wanted to have another child, and we were trying for about 5 years. My heavy metals were through the roof, and my hormones were in the gutter, and I felt like crap. And I met this doctor, and he doesn't treat the symptoms. He treats what created the problem. And without a doubt, he is the most knowledgeable, most talented doctor I have ever met in my entire life. I am very grateful to be 6.5 months pregnant. Thank you, yay! He's like, woohoo! And I'm 42 years old, and my dad sees this man, my mom sees this man, my son sees this man. There are people that come into your life, and they change your life forever. One of those people is my grandma, and one is this man. And I couldn't recommend a doctor more than Dr. Sadeghi. The woman to his left is Dr. Sami. Dr. Sami practices holistic pediatric dentistry and orthodontics. She deals with the whole patient, not just the mouth. My son actually sees Dr. Sami, and he was misdiagnosed for 2 years by the head of NYU Pediatrics, by the woman who runs a division at Weill Cornell. And the first session my son saw Dr. Sami, she diagnosed him correctly. And he's 8.5 years old, and when he found out I was going to be here with them, he's like, please, can I come? Can I come? I said, I'm so sorry, it's just for adults. And he goes, well, tell them I miss them and I love them. Mm-hmm. And there are not many dentists in the whole world where kids would say that about. And with some of her patients, she works with mothers who want to have a second child. So with my absolute pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Sami, and the man on the end is Dr. Gross, who I've recently met, but I take his supplements, one of which is my favorite supplement in the whole world, which I think is like this magic pill that keeps me healthy. And when you want to have a child, obviously the health is at your forefront of your concerns. So without further ado, we will begin with this extraordinarily talented panel.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, about 15 years ago, I fell in love with this gorgeous and beautiful woman, the love of my life. But it actually turned out to be a lot more challenging and complex than I thought. 9 months into the relationship, and we never saw each other. We started communicating, writing, emails, poetry, and it was just fabulous. And then all of a sudden, I remember the very night that I told her about some of the medical challenges that I have had, and one of which was being diagnosed with testicular cancer, and the chances of being hypofertile and the chances of not being able to have a baby. And there was, 9 months into this incredible pregnant pause.
It was very eye-opening for me when he actually brought that forward, because here I was falling in love with this man who had so much in common with me. We could talk for hours and hours on end, and it was really, really important for me to have a child. And he was telling me that that possibility could be next to zero. So I gathered my thoughts, and it was a stretch moment where all these things is going through my head. And one of the things that came forward when I went in was, okay, there's other possibilities. I might not give birth physically, but I might be able to adopt one of those beautiful children that I go to Guatemala or El Salvador for the humanitarian trips that I take yearly, and visit the orphanages and bring them back home. There is the possibility of giving birth to a center that nurtures moms and their children. There is a possibility of bringing forward that level of support for families. So there's all these thoughts going through my head of, what if I was not able to birth a child physically? what other ways I can still be a mom and still be with this wonderful man.
Well, lucky me, as you can see, it worked out. And we started this incredible journey. And as I reflect back, I don't think that we were the only ones that had some challenges. I see men and women dealing with their own unique challenges, whether physically, psycho-spiritually, or energetically. And what we would like to bring forward for you today is a more of an expanded definition of fertility and an expanded definition of what is possible. For instance, I clearly remember the CEO that was diagnosed hypofertile, and he had the sperm count, and he brought it in, and we were looking at it. And then simply we found out that as Cloud brought forward, heavy metals such as thallium, his thallium level were really elevated. And one of the side effects is that thallium affects the spermatogenesis, the production of sperm, and so forth. So by simply redefining a laptop and separating the laptop from his actual lab, shortly after, his sperm counts elevated and he was able to father a child.
For the same token, a lot of times when the mothers, they come to me and they have birthed one child, but they're having a really difficult time birthing the second child, I go through their mouth and I look at, how much mercury and silver filling is in their mouth. Because if there is the leaking silver mercury fillings in their blood, the chance of their fertility drops down, as well as their toxicity level is high.
One of the things that I wanted to share was the idea and the possibility that what is occurring in our mouth and teeth can actually affect various different organs in our body. And I wonder, no one is more of an expert than you, if you could say a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I'm a biological dentist, so I actually look at the whole body and I evaluate it for the wholeness of how the health is actually impacting the person. So it was interesting, but I just adore kids, and I really, really have an amazing time treating children. So I have closed my practice only to children. And my husband comes and says, I really want you to see this adult, the adult patient. She's very phobic. She has a lot of challenges being in the dentist, and she's really attached to this one wisdom tooth. She doesn't want to take it out, and every single dentist that she goes to, wants to take this tooth out. So I said, okay, because I love you, I'll accept, So she comes over, and I take a look at the tooth, and it was in a really bad shape. It was better if it was being extracted. However, this woman, she was very in tune with her body, and she kept telling me that there is this, attachment to this tooth, the fact that she wants to really keep this tooth. So we took care of it, that tooth. And afterward, I kind of brought forward to her that the meridians between the tooth and every organs, as well as emotions, and the wisdom teeth are actually the reproductive system. And at that point, she actually told me that she has had several years of trying to conceive, and she hasn't been able to do so. And it was shortly after that I got the great news from my husband that 3 months afterwards she actually conceived and was able to have a child. So it was bringing forward that aspects of the meridians and the relationship between teeth and organs, as well as the emotions and the whole energetic system, which I would love for you to explain it a little bit more.
Sure. And, sometimes there are things that we can do, and they sort of have a double sword, if you would. Sometimes it could be medications that we're taking. As I say, medication, I had a patient, a 43-year-old gentleman, that was diagnosed with gout, and he was taking a medication for off-label usage of this particular medication for the relief of his gout. The medication is colchicine. Well, yeah, and he was hypofertile, and he didn't produce enough sperm and so forth, and he couldn't father a child. Well, it just turned out, and he completely melted when I told him that one of the side effects of colchicine is it actually affects spermatogenesis or the sperm production. Believe it or not, they use colchicine as a medication to turn watermelons into seedless watermelons. And it was incredible. We took him off the medication. We recommended, I think, 2 or 3 natural products, including 100% organic cherry juice that he was having a cup every day. His uric acid dropped, and he didn't have any more gout attack, and he fathered a child. And that's the picture. You can hardly see him in the background. But it's just a matter of really looking for the root cause of what could be creating the problem rather than covering the symptoms.
The other aspects of some of the things that can happen in regard to the mouth with the rest of the body, when you have periodontal disease where your gums are very inflamed and you have certain types of bacteria, it actually activates the prostaglandins in your body. And prostaglandin is the hormone that is used when you go through contraction and giving birth. That's basically the contraction aspects of it. So when the elevated prostaglandin happens in the body actually thinks that it needs to go to labor, and so then they can have early miscarriages. So that's another relationship that.
And sometimes it could be more occult. It could be more hidden. Sometimes a woman could have gone through certain traumas. It could have been they were a gymnast, they fell off, and they landed on their buttocks. And all of a sudden, it has physically affected their uterus. So they might have a tilted uterus. And if physically, if there is a structural deviation, no amount of hormone or no amount of support can really help them other than relieving the tension that is being created on the uterus. And, and then whether seeing the appropriate practitioner, whether it's a chiropractor or an osteopath, they could relieve that tension, release the tilted uterus, and it'll be a lot more effective in terms of fertility.
So one of our intention for this talk is actually to bring forward not just this physical aspect of pregnancy, but how the your emotional as well as your mental state affects, being fertile. One of the things as a woman I have really experienced in my life, it's, was, okay, first, when are you going to graduate from college? And now when are you going to become your, get your doctoral degree? And now when you're going to get your specialty? And now when you're going to get married? And now when you're going to have kids? And it just, the list of expectations from, not only our family, but our friends, it's endless. And there is an internal voice that keeps coming, and I keep working with it, that I put myself in the same to-do list of expectations that everybody puts me on. And it creates this huge challenge of more of a masculine energy. Our masculine energy is the to-do list, like we get this done and we get that done and we get that done. And the feminine energy that it's required for us to become fertile and to become to host the child is more of a feminine, accepting, being, sitting, being more vulnerable energy, which a lot of us in this society, it's really difficult to do because there's just the to-do list and expectations are so high.
And I think that probably has a lot to do with when we're looking at autoimmune diseases, and these are the diseases that the body produces against itself. There is a clear genetic predilection. In other words, when you're looking at the rate of autoimmune disease, women to men, the ratio is 10-1. That's staggering. A particular disease that affects a particular gender 10 times more, that's amazing. Why is that? And I think, as Dr. Sami Sherry has brought forward, the communication that we're having aside from the expectation, more importantly, how we, the listenings that we have for ourselves, the way we communicate with ourselves has a lot to do with developing antibodies that really could hurt us.
What was interesting for me is throughout the research that we were doing in this area to find out that American Indians, when there is a couple that they're having challenges with fertility, they actually remove the woman and they put her in with some very nurturing women in a tent where it's a very sacred space. So they're not hearing everybody kind of talking about, you know, how they cannot become pregnant. And instead nurturing her with a lot of empowering thoughts and a lot of beautiful nurturing aspects. And you know, based on some of our friends that they're of that origin, that really creates a space where the woman feels, you know, accepted and acknowledged rather than criticized for what she's going through. So it takes the pressure off and it creates a very sacred space for what they're going through.
Well, in Sanskrit, there is a saying, fertile imagination makes you pregnant. Having said that, what was fascinating, and I'm going to share it with you, was, gosh, how are we using these words? Would you like to mention a little bit about that?
Absolutely. When they looked at the word imagination over the past 200 years, actually the usage of the word dropped down significantly. The usage of fertility for the same token, it also dropped down significantly. However, the usage of the word pregnancy went up.
So when you're looking at imagination and fertility, these are a state of consciousness. And we believe that that state of consciousness precedes an active, dynamic movement, a to-do list of wanting to get pregnant.
There's something that is very prevalent in our own lives. You know, when we want to create something, we always do an ideal scene or a vision board. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but vision boards basically is you know, you get a piece of board and then you put down the things, the idealistic, the perfect ways. You don't put down how you're going to get there, but you're going to put down what you really want to do. And we did that. We just opened up our Integrative Center, you know, together about a month ago. And 3 years ago, I had done a vision board about it. And it was all the things that I wanted to have in this center together, but without any attachments. So I put it on the board and I detached from it. It's like, okay, this is what I want the universe to bring me, but that or something better for the highest good.
Having an ideal scene on a vision board, it's the reason I'm sitting in front of you. It actually saved my life. And I actually have it and I can tell you exactly what it looks like. I remember the picture in the center, and this is the time that I was going through a rough time. They were saying that I might die or this might happen, and they were feeding me all these statistics. The center picture was this incredible and majestic stormy day, and it was all snow and it was all fogged up. And to me, that represented going into the unknown, of not knowing, but trusting myself. And then I had pictures of Lance Armstrong. Back then, you know, he was diagnosed, and I said, wow, this guy's was diagnosed. He lost part of his lungs, he lost part of his brain, and he ended up winning the Tour de France. He's my hero. If he can do that, I can beat this. So his picture was there. I had pictures of children, even though they had mentioned that I was hypofertile and I couldn't have children. So that's what really fed me. That was what really kept my my soul alive. And I knew that I was going to just do it. Now, that's an ideal scene. And every single patient that crosses my path, you know, this is something that I bring forward. The idea of not necessarily what is. I think no one has said it better than Shakespeare. Shakespeare talks about assume a virtue if you have it not. Or in Hamlet, Act 4, Scene 5, Shakespeare says, Lord, Lord, we know what we are. Lord, we know what we are, but know not what we may be. And I think having an ideal scene is that what we may be.
this aspect of it is so easily practiced, with the pediatric patients. A lot of times when my patients, they come into the practice because they're so open, their imagination is incredibly fertile, and they really use that imagination to their best of well-being. I actually use that in order to heal certain things. So sometimes I do a certain surgery inside their mouth, and I actually tell them, while they're on the chair, I said, okay, we're just going to close our eyes, and we're going to imagine like little fairies going inside your mouth and inside your body, and doing what, throwing pixie dust onto this little area. And then you're going to do that like 2-3 times a day. It's amazing, because I've worked with a lot of oral surgeons that they're actually not at all of this consciousness, and they, guided visualizations and things like that. It just not part of their vocabulary. And they come in like, oh my God, I can't believe like this site, it's supposed to be, at least 4 weeks before the site actually rejuvenates. And now it's only 2 weeks and everything looks amazing. And I really can see with children, because they have that energy and that receptivity and that vulnerability and openness, they're actually able to produce certain things in their body that bring forward the most amount of health and most amount of healing in their consciousness. So.
And I actually experienced this for myself firsthand. I remember walking out of City of Hope, and I met with this urological oncologist, and he was advising. What he was recommending is what's referred to as retroperitoneal lymphadenectomy. It's a 12 to 16-hour procedure. They would cut you open, literally fillet you open all the way up just underneath the diaphragm, and they would take out para-aortic lymph nodes and so forth, and then you would do chemotherapy and radiation. This is a particular procedure that I chose not to have. Instead, and I was frightened. I'm not going to lie to you. I was really, I remember walking out and I had this constricted boa around my throat. I couldn't eat. I couldn't talk. I just couldn't swallow my own saliva. And I was frightened. I was contracted. But one of the things that I did that actually worked for me was I learned how to contain my emotion. In other words, I actually saw this little boy inside me that was just frightened. He thought that he was going to die. I started talking to myself. If I want to give it a name, a label, we call it positive self-talk. That's what I did. And it sounded like this. I know you're frightened, but I'm not going to leave you. And I know that we're going to go through this. It was so, all of a sudden, it's like the boa disappeared. I could swallow my saliva, I could talk, and I was in touch with my emotions. So this, as Sherry shares this with you, this is something that I actually went through and I experienced it. This process of allowing our mind, our fertile imagination to direct us. And I know, and I think to some extent we all know, where we look is where we go.
And the other aspects of it, for the same token, was that when, kind of going back to the initial story, when he talked to me about that he might not be able to conceive a child, it was that aspect that I work with, that it's like, okay, how can I be complete with this process and, still go through marriage with utmost open-heartedness, not with regrets, not with darkness, not with blaming, like any of that, those kind of emotions, and still be in a state of receptivity, because it was such an important thing for me. So when we got married, we did a vision board about our family and what we want to bring forward, and other than the aspects of that, we wanted to really go around the world and lecture together and bring forward a lot of health and healing and consciousness. Was also, two little children, so, and without attachment, just kind of putting it on the corner. And if it was meant to be, it was meant to be. And if it was not, I will really manifest that in other ways. So surrendering to that aspect. But I had to really do a lot of work inside, where where I could come from a space of loving, because it's easy to say, okay, that's okay, and then a few years later change your mind and say, hey, I really wanted to have a kid, so I'm just gonna, go and have a kid with someone else. So I really had to be complete with that aspects and just be in that state of vulnerability and surrendering.
And I think what we're suggesting, it's really gender free. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're in a relationship with a man or a woman, or a man and a man, or a woman and a woman. I think that what we're bringing forward has a lot to do with the way that we relate with each other. And that becomes incredibly important. The relationship that we build, especially the relationship that we have with ourselves, it actually can be measured. We have a particular index, a set of blood work and ratios that we look at. We refer to it as pregnancy index, and it's very real. The pregnancy index can be measured for a man or a woman. It's irrelevant, and it has nothing to do with pregnancy. And it has everything to do with the tolerance that a person has for a new idea. That's it. Because the way that we approach, the consciousness that we bring forward, the more tolerance that we have for accepting, holding a new idea, it's exactly the same thing physiologically speaking. When a woman is impregnated, there is a whole process, but the pregnancy, it's considered to be a foreign material. Believe it or not, a woman's, yes, see that, there's agreement. The woman's immunity will soften up, because if the woman's immunity does not soften up, does not lower, the woman's immunity will literally reject this foreign material of an embryo. And that's one of the things that occurs throughout a person's pregnancy. And remember, I brought this up there. There's we're not going back. Oh, there we are. Oh, well, here we go. Christine R. She was a dear patient from Canada, and I actually received this this card, and I thought that I'll share it with you. That's an actual card of a patient. The idea, and if you look on the right side, I think she underlined B. It says be pregnant. That was the idea that I brought forward for her. So when Sherry talks about health, healing, and consciousness and fertility, and the fact that we're bringing forward that fertility starts with a state of consciousness, it's really a state of being. It's going into this place of negative capability, the ability of being with the mystery of not knowing.
And as you can imagine, like that creates a lot more relaxations in the couple's interaction. It's not about like, okay, now we got to go and, we got to do this and now it's time, So it actually creates a little bit of an opening where when you can really be with each other and you can really accept each other and be open to what would come forward and what some of the miracles that you might not expect, or it might not be exactly in your immediate vision. So that creates a clearing.
Wow.
And I wanted to actually share this beautiful poem. It's called Clearing. Do not try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life and wait there patiently.
You're reading it so well. Why don't you complete it?
Okay. Until the song that is your life falls into your own cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world, so worth of rescue.
That's a great, to us, that's a beautiful poem that speaks of clearing and how to really create this state of consciousness. That poem, it's by Martha Postlethwaite, I believe. And, and it's from that depth of humility that we are bringing you what we're sharing with you, which has been really a reflection of our journey and something that has helped us.
And as we recap the whole thing, there is a lot of physical things that might be of hindrance in terms of going to that fertile state, but there's also other aspects of mental and emotional and that consciousness that we bring forward in order to create that state of fertility. And you want to tell?
Sure. You know, this idea of whether it's physical, whether it's psycho-spiritual, whether it's energetic, the process is starting from a clearing, starting from holding the definition, having the imagination, having a fertile imagination that could, with ease and grace, lead into pregnancy. And for us, without further ado, these are the two masters in our life. This is Hannah, 6-month-old, and that's Hafez, 7 years old, our son and our daughter. And we learn from him every day. The idea of letting go and creating the clearing that miracles could occur.
And they were both big surprises.
And speaking of clearing and the miracles, there are specific things that a person can do. And I wonder if Dr. Gross would be kind enough to mention a few things about some of the supplements.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how to follow up such an inspiring, beautiful story with mundane suggestions on day-to-day living. But in terms of what you need to do, your machine, your engine has to be working properly. So what does that entail? Remove toxins like you're talking, heavy metals. Remove the stress and the emotional downplay that you have. And then what do? Feed the physical. I think there has to be a component of physical enhancement to approach fertility. And what does that mean? Lifestyle choices. Simple things. Avoid the things you know you should avoid. Smoking, recreational drugs, alcohol in excess caffeine, highly refined sugar diets, fad diets. So get a basic healthy diet and supplement that with nutrition. So nutrition would be one of the bases for attempting to get yourself ready for this process. And so once you have a decent diet, healthy diet, you have to look at what specific nutrients might be playing a role. And this has intrigued me for about 40 years, ever since I was in Africa studying Zulu mothers who were folate deficient. And folic acid has been one of my favorite vitamins for forever, because we found that we could markedly change their lives with it. Folic acid deficiency results in poor infection resistance, poor cellular immunity. And we were the first, actually, 40 years ago to show that folate deficiency during pregnancy adversely affected the child. We did follow-up studies on these children and published the fact that their gross motor, fine motor, and intellectual development was impaired. And since then, it's obviously been pushed as something you have to take during pregnancy. So what other things can you take that would make your sperm better, eggs better? Simple things that we all ignore and we're probably all deficient in. Trace minerals, another of my favorites. Zinc, critical for both men and women. Selenium, very important for sperm motility and number. Manganese, something you never think of. Magnesium, for sure. We're all somewhat deficient in these things. And what's the best way to take that? Probably a multi-mineral, a trace mineral supplement. And look for foods that are good in those things. Nuts, green leafy vegetables, and fruits. Besides the trace minerals, what else do you need? Vitamin D. We all tend to avoid the sun because it's so bad for us, and that's where we get most of our vitamin D. So if you survey people, adults, you'll find that a vast majority of them are somewhat marginally deficient in blood in vitamin D. So a vitamin D supplement, very simple, very inexpensive, and very safe. What other things can you add to your diet that you're not getting when you eat? When you eat fruits and vegetables and you're looking for antioxidant effects, vitamin C, very good antioxidant. What about other antioxidants? We all heard about antioxidants like polyphenols and green tea extract, an excellent source of antioxidants. Other things would be things like coenzyme Q. If you're taking a statin for your cholesterol, you have to take coenzyme Q because that will obviate the muscle pain and problems you develop with the statin. It also is a very effective way of increasing your cellular metabolism. things you've never heard of, like L-carnitine, something you can look for in your store. L-carnitine is essential for normal cellular maintenance. It's what carries the fat from the cell into the mitochondria, where it's metabolized into energy. So these are simple things that probably don't come up in your daily life. You're probably not getting enough in your diet, but would be helpful. So nutrition, for sure. One thing that you have to remember is that in nutrition, there are certain food allergies, so you have to be sure that you're not allergic to gluten, to whey protein, or anything else, dairy products. That should be part of an evaluation to make sure that you're not eating something that is causing immune reactions that is detrimental to your overall health and fertility. I've been fascinated with Cloud kind of mentioned the supplements, fascinated with supplements and what they can do. And I think that there's an approach you can take that I like to think I take, and one is that you can maximize the body's own physiologic processes using certain supplements. My favorites are what are called adaptogens. And adaptogens are wonderful, wonderful plant products, herbal products that have been shown to normalize whatever is abnormal. They basically function to make homeostasis, that is the addition and the balance in your body, normal. If your blood pressure is too high, it lowers it. If it's too low, it raises it. If your blood sugar is too high, it lowers it. If it's too low, it raises it. If your stress level is too high, it calms you down. If you're weak and tired and fatigued, it raises your energy up. And so at the same time it's giving you more energy, it'll help you sleep better. And these adaptogens have been studied prominently in Europe mostly, and sometimes now in the United States. And there are several that I would recommend in terms of a fertility picture. I would definitely recommend these that have been studied to maximize sperm count and motility and potency, and that's maca. It's really called the ginseng of the Andes. It's grown only at like 10,000 feet and above. It's a root, and it is marvelous in terms of increasing your energy, increasing your resistance to infection, improving your immune system, and increasing your sexual function, men and women. So it increases libido, and it increases sperm count, sperm motility. In fact, and there are stories from when the conquistadors were there, looking everywhere for gold, where they came to a point after they had tried this, they said, forget the gold, we'll take some maca. And so that would be one that's probably not all that well known, but it's certainly worth considering. Other ones that would be really excellent for that is one that I've been fascinated with, which is a medicinal mushroom from China that's been used for hundreds of years for sexual problems. And that includes fertility, infertility, sexual potency, sperm count. It's anything to do with sexual function, and that's Cordyceps sinensis. And it's a very unusual. You probably won't want to take it after I tell you how they get it. About 10 years ago, when the Russians and the East Germans burst on the scene with world records in swimming and track, they asked the coach, "What are you doing? Are you PEDing?" And he said, "No, we use a caterpillar extract, and that's Cordyceps sinensis. It's found only in the highlands of Tibet and northern China. It grows as a fungus invading a caterpillar, so that you have to go and look for the caterpillar, and out of that is a fungal stalk, and if you take the fungal stalk or grind up the caterpillar in the stalk, you get the cordyceps. It now is grown on yeast, and it's grown on red rice, rather. It's much safer now and less expensive. But it really does everything you'd want an adaptogen to do. In terms of sexual function, it's probably one of the best. In terms of your energy level, if you're fatigued, you're stressed, it will normalize those. If your immune system is down, it'll improve that too. So that's one that's probably not all that well known, but I would recommend that you look for it. The other ones that I think are the best are Shishandra, which is an adaptogen from China. It's been used there for hundreds of years. Basically does the same thing. It's been studied and effectively improves all the things that are wrong with you. It'll make it better. The nice thing about all of these is they're terribly non-toxic. You can take boatloads of it, and nothing will happen. So they're safe, and they do have an effect. In terms of other things you can do, I think there are other adaptogens, but I think you get the idea that if you Google adaptogens, it'll talk about others like rhodiola. It'll talk about Eleutherococcus, which is Siberian ginseng. It'll talk about suma, which is Brazilian ginseng. It'll talk about Panax ginseng, which is ginseng. And I think if you familiarize yourself with them, it's something that I would add to I think it should be added to everyone's diet, period. And certainly in terms of fertility, it'll be helpful. There are herbs that'll do the same thing. And there are herbs, particular herbs that are not common to U.S. We talk about St. John's wort and things like that. And these are a little more unusual, but they're very, very effective. There's two in particular, and I think Dr. Sadeghi would like to talk about that too. Chasteberry is one that is very important. This has been used around the world for hundreds of years to normalize the hormonal changes with the fertility cycle. So it's been used for menstrual problems, it's been used for infertility, it's very safe, and it does, as a single herb, probably one of the best. In terms of others, astragalus, which is again a Chinese herb, that is one of, I guess I have too many favorites, one of my favorite herbs. But astragalus is excellent for the immune system. And in addition, it is an adaptogenic immune system stimulant, so that it has been used as a fertility aid in China for years, and it's probably not very common over here. So I think that we're running a little. Yeah. The point I'd like to make, you don't need to know all these specific things, but there are things out there that would be very helpful in terms of your daily life, your daily stress, your overall health, your immune system, and in terms of fertility that can maximize it in a very safe and effective way. This would be on top of all the other things that you're doing, but something simple that can help.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I really want to give you guys some time to ask some questions, and I want to tell you that Dr. Sadeghi and Dr. Sami have created this place called Beehive of Healing. And you walk in, and it's the most relaxing, restorative healing center you can imagine. And Dr. Gross works with them. And literally, people are waiting for months and months and months to see these doctors and ask them questions. So I really want all of you guys to get any questions you have asked. And I don't know about you, but I have all these questions I even want to ask them. So does anybody, who would like to start? Who else? Yes.
This is for the entire panel, I guess. We heard of all these herbs and different types of things that we can supplement our diet with, but it's kind of like, where do we start? Is there something that you can recommend, like a multivitamin, or just for the actual fertility aspect?
Yeah, that's a good question. Is it okay if I?
Absolutely.
So, anyone can start a vitamin. They can call it super duper fertility vitamin, and that'll be it. And if you spend enough money on marketing and so forth, then all of a sudden everyone will be taking it. Well, part of the process of what we've done is we've taken a level of fastidiousness and selectivity to the point that most of the products that we're using, we know what's in it. So they're pharmaceutically graded, which means that they don't have pesticides and fungicides, and heavy metals in it. Where to start would be Healing Pregnancy would be a great multivitamin that you can purchase it at beehiveofhealing.com. Beehive is spelled with one E, so it's BEHIVEOF as in Frank, healing.com. And on the same website, if you go to press and then newsletter, you can register complimentary for our monthly newsletter. So a lot of the information and so forth that we're sharing, it will be there, and it's all archived back in, I think, October or November 2011 on. So we've been doing this for a while. So Healing Pregnancy would be a great supplement to start. The other one would be, in terms of the herbal products, there is one product called Remember Labor Day. And that's sort of what we've talked about in terms of the ideal scene and visualization. And just, where you look is where you go. Remember walking into and being, walking into labor and delivery. So that particular herb has a lot of the adaptogens and different things in it. And everything, it's sealed and everything is listed, okay? Obviously, it would be best if your blood is checked. One of the things that Dr. Gross brought forward, MD, trained from Harvard, PhD, Tufts. I mean, a significant amount of research is behind him. It's to take a look. Look, if people have they have gluten intolerance or allergy or insensitivity or dairy, then the cervical mucosa and so forth will be so thick that it's impossible for the sperm motility to penetrate, so to speak, and to fertilize the egg. So there are certain things that can be done. We're not saying that there is a panacea. Remember Labor Day and you're going to get pregnant, or healing pregnancy, or heal D2 5000 and so forth. But that's a good place to start. A state of consciousness, knowing that fertility, right? Structure precedes function, and then before this structure is the way. It's the particular way of the consciousness that we're holding, and then there is A to Z in terms of what to do. A good multi, remembering Labor Day, and a good vitamin D. Anything that you might want to?
Yeah, I wanted to just throw something out that I like, and in terms of supplementation naturally, there's something called chlorella, which is the most nutrient-dense product on earth. It has 22 minerals and vitamins, all of the amino acids, healthy fats. It has chlorella growth factor, which helps to normalize cells, and it also speeds up detoxification of heavy metals. It actually will accelerate the movement. So if there's one kind of nutrient dense, you want to get everything in, chlorella is something to keep in mind.
Thank you. There's a woman in front. I'm going to go for two more. I know you said one more. I'm going to go for two more. Okay.
Thank you all. I've just done 2 rounds of embryo transfer and IVF and failed at everything, but I have a tilted cervix, and you touched on that earlier. My doctor didn't seem to think that was specifically a reason, but you made me more curious about it. Could you explain more, please, and what I could possibly do, if there is something physically I can do to help myself with that?
Sure. I would like to start by really acknowledging your effort and your persistence. And what I would like to do is to send the light and the loving forward for you, for whatever it's for your highest good and all concern to unfold for you. When you're looking at the tilted uterus, so to speak, there are 3 degrees. So it's very difficult for me to tell you what to do next. It's more of evaluation. That evaluation could be done through a radiological examination, through an ultrasound, as well as a good osteopathic evaluation. And then there are specific things that can be done. And, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but look, if I want to point in this direction, and even if it's 1 degree away, look, it's like sailing. If you're 1 degree away, you're going to end up in a different continent. So here is the same direction. If structurally you have a deviation, I think that needs to be addressed. But again, that's my personal opinion as not only a family practitioner, but a person who practices medicine that has included other things, including osteopathy and anthroposophical medicine and integrative bioregulatory medicine. But our hearts with you. Yeah.
Thank you. Do you want me to? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. One last question.
I just would like to see if any recommendations you could do for people that work nights. Me and my wife are both night nurses, and we've done 1 round, so we're just kind of figuring. I know there's a lot of stresses and things that happen to the body. I know vitamin D is a lack. We try to get as much as we can, but I think we're sufficient in those. But any other suggestions or what you might think?
Very difficult problem when your biorhythm is kind of interrupted. Are you on an on-off schedule in terms of nights, or is it consistent?
It's consistent.
It's consistent. Well,
She's actually
both. That's difficult. That's very difficult. There's really nothing good that has been found yet. I mean, it's just one of those things
that's the truth.
And I think that the one thing I would suggest is, because adaptogens, it doesn't matter what's wrong with your system; it'll normalize those things. I would suggest getting a product with a kind of a mixture of adaptogens in it. Other than that, it's just the physical part of what you're doing and change is. There's nothing that we can take to overcome that. The fact that you're on a schedule nights all the time, that's better. It's your wife that is. I pity. I'm sorry for you because that up and down and back and forth is really a very, very difficult strain on the body. But adaptogens, I've even recommended to people that they take adaptogens when they're flying more than 2 hours because it'll normalize the jet lag quicker. So that would be one suggestion I would try. I don't know if it worked, but it's worth a try.
Sure. Go ahead.
And then I just wanted to also bring forward that making your environment way that, like, for example, really dark curtains, where it kind of almost embodies like nighttime. My parents are from Denmark, and a part of they live in Denmark, but a part of Denmark that during the winter time it gets light about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and it gets dark again at 2 o'clock afternoon. And there's still lots of kids are being born at summertime, and they're actually known as the healthiest and the happiest people on the whole planet. So one of the things that you go to a Danish house, you'll see that they have very thick, blinds. Also, another things that has been come forward a lot in that I see in the Danish culture is that they absolutely turn off all their cell phones. They have something that actually covers their Wi-Fi. So there's a steel plate that goes on to the Wi-Fi, so it's not throughout the house. And they really, really bring down the whole resonance of the house in order to make it more as they adjust. And then for the same token, during the summertime, they have literally only 2 hours of dark. So there's that aspect of it where you can kind of trick your body in a way that, okay, it's nighttime, it's dark, it's black, and now you can produce all the right hormones in order to go to sleep and lower down your cortisol.
If I may just very briefly add to that, I agree with that. There are programs that you can get for your computer where progressively throughout they block, it's the blue light that you want to block, the blue blocker, so to speak, because the blue light will activate the hypothalamus, and then the production of melatonin, as Dr. Gross brought forward, gets affected. You can see that in countries such as Denmark or that part of the world, they use significant amount of, I'm not advocating this, but significant amount of beer. Beer has hops and humulus. Humulus has a direct effect on prolactin. So that's something that can be addressed as well. And our hearts are with you. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
So if you want to find out more about these incredible doctors, you can go to fertilityplanet.com. Their bios are there. The website for their healing center is beehiveofhealing.com. And I'm so happy that we got to spend part of our afternoon together. The knowledge and the insight and the healing and the incredible things that these three people can share with us are just, they're miraculous. So thank you.
Really quickly, I want to acknowledge and appreciate Cloud. Cloud actually, as you can see, she's expecting, and she's visiting us from New York in honor of really being here and supporting us. We're very grateful.
Thank you. I changed my ticket so I could introduce these people to you. These people changed my life. They changed my dad's health, my mom's health, my son's health, my health, and the little guy's health. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.